So yeah, I'm Lynn Clay. I live in Libertyville. I'm originally from Southern California. I did not know it at the time, but I used to do a lot of traveling when in my 20s and 30s, and whenever I would go someplace, people would always say, well, where are you from? Are you from the Midwest? And I'm like, Midwest? I lived in Southern California. I was born there. I was raised there. I was born in Hollywood. I lived there my whole life. It's like, why do people think I'm from the Midwest? And then I moved to the Midwest, and I decided it was a compliment that people thought I was from the Midwest. Because Midwesterners are community people, and Midwesterners are family-oriented people, and Midwesterners are so nice and warm. And so I was very honored that they assumed that that's where I was from, and not from California. And then when they find out I'm from Southern California, they're like, we know about you people. So it is such an honor to be here with you. You need to know that I really have no credentials for this. I've had a couple people already ask me, so are you a sociologist? Are you a psychologist? Are you a and I'm like, no. I work in a church. I'm at the chapel in Libertyville. I've been on staff there for 16 years. I have been, my husband and I have been foster parents. Our youngest daughter is adopted, local adoption. We got her when she was 2, and she's 18. She is African American, living in a very white family in white bread Libertyville. I think she was unfortunately one of 3 people growing up in her school that was of color. So it's been an interesting road for her. Sometimes she tells me, sometimes I forget I'm black, and then I look in the mirror and it's like, oh, I'm black. I'm so sorry we have not done a better job of helping you, know your roots. But so I am not a sociologist. I have no degree in this. The roles that I play in my church has led a lot to this, although there is a thread in my life where God, from a very early age, has wired me to go to the fringes. I've always been drawn to odd ducks, people that struggle with addictions, different sexual orientations, for whatever reason. Anybody who's picked on, I would just kind of plant my body in between, and so that is a thread that God has woven into my life. So I've always been involved in those kind of areas growing up, but I did not come to know Jesus till I was 30. So as far as ministry work, that happened much later in my life. So I have a lot of baggage. I have a lot of stories. If we were going to share our worst sins of all time, I'm pretty sure I could beat all of you. But we serve a God that is a restorer and a healer and a redeemer. Thank goodness that He can change us from the inside out. We can't do that, but He can do that. So before we start, let me pray, if that's all right. Lord, thank you so much for this time that you have set aside for this group of people, that they would take precious time and they would come to talk about something that is near and dear to your heart, which is your beloved people. And you tell us that you are close to the brokenhearted. And while we are all brokenhearted, some maybe more than others, but that we are rallying around together to create community, to sit at your feet and listen to your voice and go where you tell us to go. So just thank you for their willingness to sit, willingness to learn, willingness to share, to ask questions, to doubt, to be frustrated, to get angry. Justifiable anger at situations that we all are coming up against. You promise that wherever 2 or more are gathered, that you are in the midst of that, so we know that you are here, so we are sitting in sacred ground together. So I just pray that you would do a supernatural thing with us here tonight, that you would bond us fast, that whatever kernel it is that you want us to have a aha moments over, that you would reveal that quickly, because we have a really short time together, that you can do that because you are not bound by time. We love you. We are grateful for the love that you lavish on us. It's in your name we pray, Jesus. Amen. So, I'm going to give you a minute. And why do you work with people in poverty? You have 1 minute, whatever first comes into your brain, as many things as you can think of. Why do you work with people in poverty? Go. Okay, clearly this is an interactive thing. I am not a good, well, look at me talk. Yeah. So I'm going to invite you to interact. I'm going to invite, you can speak in the middle of this. If you have a question, please shout it out. If you get angry about something that I say, you will not faze me, trust me. And so just, this is interactive, all right? If you want to write it down and keep it private, you can do that too. But I either want to see you writing or speaking. Ready, set, go. Yes.
Can I suggest that maybe it's why are you interested in working? Because not maybe everybody is working with people in poverty.
All
so
right.
that might help people to
that
respond
would be fine
as well.
Because they need it.
Because they need it. What else?
They have children.
Because they have children. What does it tell me what that means?
My heart is for the child.
So if somebody is in poverty,
Help out with
okay,
with the child's concern.
okay,
To empower them.
to empower them,
To lift them up.
to lift them up,
To help society to grow.
to help society grow. Somebody said something?
That's what it says.
Because God said so.
Yeah.
That always goes over well as parents, right? Why do I have to do that? Well, because I said so. But he did say so. Yeah, I don't mind it when he says so much. It's when my husband tells me to do something, he says because I said so, and I'm like, oh. Anything else?
I brought pretty close to it.
So you know what it's like?
Yeah, probably not to the extremes that I see,
Yeah,
but close.
okay. So it's a giving back kind of
Yes, I
thing.
get it.
Okay.
We have resources that they can use.
Okay, sharing our resources.
Coming alongside a mother that doesn't have anyone else.
Because I fell backwards into it. Because I have foster kids whose parents live in poverty, and so I
You backed your way into it, and now you're stuck.
Yeah.
I better learn about this because I'm in it. Okay. Yeah.
It's a chance to show the love of Jesus.
Show the love of Jesus. Anything else?
Family members.
Family members.
Member.
Say that again. Family members that are in poverty. So there are a lot of motivations of why we might want to work in poverty. If you had to pick between I am a judger or I'm a fixer, right? Most of us are a little bit of both, but if you had but we tend to lean one way or the other. How many of you are fixers? How many of you are judgers? Okay. Okay. I'm only asking these questions because the more that we understand our motivations and why we do the things that we do, the more we can figure out why we get frustrated or why we get angry or why we want to move away or why we get intimidated or whatever the things that are coming up as we step into these situations. It's important for us to know, first of all, why we're even doing it. And second of all, if I am a fixer and I go in to a situation and I can't fix it, how am I going to feel? Like I failed. I failed. I should be able to fix it, right? So it's important that we know our motivations as to why we're doing something. Is it possible? Well, first let's define poverty. There's a secular definition of poverty and there's a biblical definition of poverty. The secular definition of poverty is to the I'm going to read it so that I don't mess it up. definition is to the extent to which an individual does without resources. And the resources, let's go on here so I can scroll. Here are the resources, okay? There's financial, emotional, mental, spiritual, physical, support systems, relationships, role models, and what's called the knowledge of hidden rules. Hidden rules are the unspoken cues of a group. How many of you go to this church? Okay, a lot of you. Tell me, do you come dressed up or do you come casual? Casual to church. Do you raise your hands to Jesus or do you keep them down when you worship? You can do either. Okay. Do you talk back to the minister, to your pastor while he's teaching?
No.
Oh goodness, no. Those are hidden rules. Okay, your church, I mean, if you've been here long enough, you know you do not talk back to the pastor, right? If you go into
I just want to say, I think we could, but I don't feel that we can.
I don't know. I just don't see you going, preach it to me, give it to me now, come on, let's go. I just don't see you doing it.
No, not me, but but I feel he's open to,
Couple amens here.
That's awesome. So those are what's called hidden rules. I am a chaplain in Lake County Jail. I oversee our jail ministry. I've been doing jail ministry and a chaplain in the jail for 6 years now. And I always invite the men and the women to come to church when they come out. Very few take me up on it. But there's this one guy who said, I'm coming next Sunday. I get out on Thursday. I'm going to see you at church on Sunday. And it didn't even occur to me to tell him about what to wear. Because we're very casual. I mean, I sing, and this is what I look like on stage when I sing. I mean, we're very, very casual. It's come as you are. And bless his heart, he came in full, shiny suit. He had his best on. And so as soon as he walked in the door, it's like everyone's like, and I felt so bad. So, I mean, it wasn't a big deal or anything like that. But he goes, you didn't tell me that I could wear my jeans. I'm so sorry that you look really good. Hidden rules. That's what allows us to know that we are part of the group. So these are the resources that we are going to say the extent to which an individual does without those resources, that is what secular poverty is. Biblical poverty is something very different. The biblical definition is what's called the absence of shalom, which is peace. That's peace with God, peace with self, peace with others, peace with creation. All right? So if you look at the secular definition of poverty, are any of you in poverty? If you look at the biblical definition of poverty, who's in poverty? All of us. All of us, even with Christ, we are all in poverty. Because do we have true peace with God, with others, with self, with creation? No. So, two different definitions of poverty. So as we step into ministry with the poor, who's the poor? I might have more resources, but I'm just as broken. I look shinier on the outside. I came in my shiny suit, but inside, I have deep, deep wounds. I went without Jesus for 30 years. of stuff. There's a lot of sinning. And not the sinning that, you know, you can make it look like it's okay, but the kind of stuff where people go, so, you know, those wounds do not just go away because now Jesus comes in my life. He's doing a work of restoration inside of me. So when I step into working with somebody, I'm very aware that I am just as broken as the person that I'm working with. So let's meet in our brokenness, and then we can share our resources with each other. So I might have physical resources, but what the other person might bring is they might bring a depth of relationship that I can't even fathom, because I don't need other people like somebody who actually lives in poverty needs other people. Because you can't survive without relationships in poverty. I can survive without relationships. I got my few, I got my family, I got some friends, but if my family and my friends go away, I'm still going to function. I still will be able to, you know, eat and drive my car and go to work and all those things. So one of the first things that as we are talking about, as we're stepping into working with people of poverty, is maybe, I want you to, let's consider that maybe God is doing this for us. Is there something that He is trying to do a work inside of us, and He's just going to use that as an avenue to teach us something about the brokenness in ourselves? So it's just it's a brain flip, a little bit different way to think about that. And one of the things when I'm going to tell you a quick story of, as we step into ministry with people, one of the first things that we want to think about is, who are they? I want to understand who I'm with more than I want them to understand me. You know, I know me. I know me very well. I have lived with me for a really long time, but I don't know them. So I don't know what makes them tick. I don't know why they think the way they think. I don't know what their motivations are. Just like I asked you, are you a judger or a fixer? I know nothing about them. What I do know is that if I have their kids, what are they feeling? Judged? What else? Shame. Oh, what else? Horrible. What else? Guilt. Keep going. Give me goosebumps.
Relief?
Relief. There might be relief, absolutely.
Fear.
Fear.
Anger.
Anger.
Lonely.
Lonely.
Could be gratitude.
Might be gratitude. Grief. Those are all heavy, heavy words, aren't they? So, here you are with this stranger. You don't know them, they don't know you. You have their kids, and all those things that they're feeling. Why in the world are they not grateful for what I'm doing? I mean, I am here to help them. I am here to serve them. I am here to give them a break. I am here to teach them. I am here to, anybody use the word rescue? I'm here to rescue. We wouldn't say that out loud. Why are they angry? Why are they mad at me? Why don't they, why?
Because they can't do what we're doing for them.
Yeah, so if you're feeling shame or guilt or anger or fear or all those things, are you going to be nice and easy and lovely? Probably not. Probably not. So one of the things that I thought would be kind of interesting for us to do together is a little bit about hidden rules, a little bit about concrete versus abstract thinking, Because I'm guessing that you want to know why people keep making poor choices, why they are not grateful, why they have no money, but they show up to your house and their hair is done, and you know that it costs hundreds of dollars to do their hair, and their nails look great, and they are blinged out to the max. Is that it? And, or they, there we go, or they spend all their money on cigarettes. Anything else? Tell me some things that pop into your head, that have popped into your head as you're serving people.
Expensive shoes.
Expensive shoes. I do not have expensive shoes. Well, maybe that's my choice. What else?
Tattoos.
Tattoos. Oh, tattoos. So I work in the jail. If anybody's interested, that very large tatted up men do it for you, you can come see me and I'll take you to jail. What else? What are the things that get under your skin?
Babies.
Babies.
Lots of them.
But they keep having babies. Why? Why? They can't take care of the ones that they have. Why would they have more babies? Anything else? Stop doing the thing that makes babies, but that's what makes the world okay. That's the good stuff in life.
What irritates me is them getting a job and then they don't like the job, so.
So they get the job, they get tired of the job, they don't like the job, the boss is a jerk, I'm not gonna stick around, and they leave.
We're getting an apartment that's donated to them and
Not
not taking care of it.
taking
or
care of
keeping
it.
up with it.
Okay.
Taking advantage of the system, the welfare system.
Taking advantage of the welfare system.
Not taking advantage of the benefits that they could tap into.
Okay.
Using money for drugs.
Using the money for drugs.
I know,
I love you guys are being honest. I gotta tell you something, because sometimes people just sit there and stare at you and they're, everything's fine. Like, I know everything's not fine. I know there's things that are nagging away at you and eating at you, and we need to speak them out loud so that we can address them and start to get an understanding of them. None of this stuff that we're gonna talk about tonight is gonna be fixed. We're not gonna come up with any miraculous things of how to deal with it. Really, all we wanna try to do tonight, because we have a very short amount of time, we won't even be able to do this in the amount of time, but we wanna come to an understanding that we're gonna try to step into understanding better of why sometimes these things are happening. Doesn't make them right, doesn't make them good, doesn't mean that we don't want to work for change. But when we have an understanding of where somebody else is coming from, it puts us more on an equal playing field. Instead of, I'm coming in with answers, you're coming in with problems. That's a big gap that now all of a sudden we have to bridge. How do we bridge that? Whereas if we can come in this way, then we have a better chance of actually helping affect some change, possibly. At the very least, we can step into relationship. What is Jesus' biggest thing? He talks about it all the time. Love. Which means you have to be in relationship. And you do it in community. Otherwise, it's just all theoretical, right? So go love your enemy. It's like, yeah, I can love my enemy in my head, but until I actually have an enemy that I actually have to deal with, it's all theoretical. So that's why he says you can't do this outside of community. You have to be in community. You have to be in relationship. So Jesus' big thing is relationship, and that should probably be our big thing, right? Is relationship. So let's just start diving into some of the things that you talked about. I mean, you guys brought them up, which is really cool. Which one do you want to talk about first? All right. First, let's talk talk about, there's two different kinds of poverty. There's generational poverty and there's situational poverty. What's situational poverty? You lost your job, and you were doing fine, and then all of a sudden you lost your job, and your husband got sick, and he went in the hospital, and now you have all these bills, and now all of a sudden, and now you're sitting in poverty. We're seeing that a lot more now than we have before. What is generational poverty? It's the way it's always been. Grandma and grandpa were poor, my great-grandma and grandpa were poor, my parents were poor. I mean, that's what we live in. It's very normal, it's very natural, it's just the way it is. I've never known anything else. Which one carries shame? Situational poverty carries a lot of shame because you've had and now you don't. If you've never had and it's normal, what's there to be shamed about? The difference is, in the United States, if you go into other parts of the world, there is no shame about poverty because everybody's poor. And when you go into third world countries. Here, do you know if you're poor? Absolutely. Absolutely, because there's media. I mean, you're seeing all the time, you should have this, you should have this, you should do this, and if I don't have it, I don't. So it's not shame, it ticks me off. That's where a lot of the anger comes from. I should have that. They keep telling me, you deserve it. Everyone should have this. So there's a difference between shame and anger. All right? So we're going to talk about generational poverty because most of you, if you're working in, say, families, you're working in foster care, those kind of things, you're working with people that come from generational poverty most likely. All right? So that's a whole different ballgame. So in generational poverty, there's a lot of things that are going on, and I'm just going to tell you a couple things. The first thing I'm going to tell you is in generational poverty, one of the biggest things that you're going to make sure that you have is relationships. That's going to be your overriding factor. Relationship, relationship, relationship. Not all of your relationships are positive. Some of them might be with Uncle Joe, who's a pedophile, but he has a car, so I might have to interact with Uncle Joe. I'm not going to leave my kids with Uncle Joe, but I still interact with Uncle Joe because he has the car. I'm in a gang, and the gang is my family. Not a really great system to work in, but those are really tight relationships. They got my back. But relationships steer everything. And if we can start as middle class, if we can start to understand that relationships are the driving force of why a lot of stuff happens, that will help us understand a little bit more about why people do the things that they do. In middle class, what is our driving force? Achievement. Oh my gosh. What is as our children are small and they are growing up, what are we preparing them for? College. How many of you have kids? Anybody not have the college talk with their kids? Somebody raise their hand. Well, he's 6 weeks old, so we haven't All right, well, we'll give you a few more weeks. And then we know you're going to stand over that crib and go, when you go to college. Achievement. Okay, what school are you going to? When I cannot tell you, as my girls are a little bit older now, but as they're in high school, and we're at church and people come up and it's like, oh, hey, so what kind of things are you doing in school? I'm going to class. Well, what kind of sports are you doing? I don't do sports. Oh, okay. So are you in music? Do you do music stuff? What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? When we introduce ourselves to each other, hi, I'm Lynn. What's your name? Damon. What do you do? He works for an insurance company. That's awesome. And you are Lynn. I love your name. Lynn's rule the world. And what do you do? You're a mom. That's awesome. Does that make you uncomfortable if somebody says, what do you do? And they ask you, what do you do? That's very, very normal conversation for us. That's one of the first things that we ask about. When you are interacting interacting with people in poverty, if you, and again, this is not everyone, this is generalizations, but pretty good generalizations. If I were to say to a young girl in high school in poverty, where are you going to college? I'm not even thinking about college. What an awkward conversation. Why would you ask me? I mean, she's not gonna say that. If I were to say to somebody, what do you do? It's like, what does that have anything to do with anything? But if I said, who are your people? Who do you hang with? Then you start conversation. Conversation starts happening. But what do you do? That's achievement oriented. If I'm living in poverty, people are my thing, not things, not what I do, but who my people are. Does that make sense? Okay. There's nothing wrong with being achievement oriented, and yet there's a lot wrong with being achievement oriented. There's nothing wrong with being highly relational, and yet sometimes there are bad things about being highly relational. Yeah.
May I ask a question, because I feel like my thought through my interaction with Sea Families and foster care has been that people I interact with are not just in poverty of resources, but in poverty of relationships is kind of what I've been taught, and that's when we see abuse happen or neglect happen, is because there is, it's the poverty goes beyond to the poverty of relationships, and they have no one to take their kids for them for the night. They have no one to pick them up from the store, or, you know, that's when it starts to spiral out.
To spiral. So one of the things that you'll find is that, like I said, if you live in poverty and you don't have relationships, then everything falls apart. And that's when you start to see where a lot of times very poor choices start to get made, where all of a sudden I don't have anyone to watch my kids, but Uncle Joe, who's a pedophile, he's like, I'm here. Go ahead, I'll watch the kids for you. And you start making a little bit poorer choices. So if you don't have a network of relationships, then yeah, things are going to start to spiral. And remember, not all relationships are positive. There's a lot of currency that takes place. So for instance, think of in terms of a bank. So you have watched my kids for me when I was at work, and now you need something for me, and so there's a deposit that has taken place relationally, all right, as opposed to I'm going to put money in the bank so that I can hire a babysitter. So there's a lot of people bartering that takes place. Somebody who has the car has really good relational clout, because that is something that everybody needs, but very few people have. Transportation is really hard. Somebody has an extra bed, so you start bartering. We see this all the time. There's an organization that the woman that usually does this with me, she does this thing called Passion Outreach, which is a mentoring program in North Chicago, and she would give one of the girls a gift of, say, $20 at Christmas or something like that. And that $20 would go to this girl over here, or to the grandma, or to the auntie, and she goes, no, I wanted to give this to you so that you could go do something for yourself. And it's just like, well, but she did this for me last week, and she did this for me yesterday, and so there's this system that goes on, but when that system breaks down, it can get ugly very, very fast. That makes sense?
Yeah, I'm sorry if you want to. I just.
No.
So I feel like there's a functionality within a relationship-based society. I mean, you can live in poverty in relationships, and I don't think that's what you're saying, but it's like an achievement-based society is not superior to a relationship-based society.
No.
I feel like the problem, like, you can function with the working relationships. It's when they break down that you spiral out of control, that you.
Okay, so let's take an achievement-based relationship. It is a family of wealth, right? The dad works 80 hours a week. He is highly driven. They have lots of really good stuff. They take great vacations. But he does not interact with his children because he does not have time. Is there something broken about that? Very, very broken about that. But that seems okay to us as opposed to somebody who has to get to work, has nobody to watch their kids, so they leave their kids in the apartment alone and they go off to work. Neither one is good. There's damage being done in both of those things. But until we sit there and go, you know what, there can be just as much damage. There's emotional and spiritual damage that can be done by not having a relationship with your children because you have chosen work over that. And then there can be physical and emotional damage that takes place when you have no other choice, and so you leave them for a period of time by themselves, and they're not ready for that yet. But they both do a lot of damage. So that's what does that make sense? Okay. So middle class, we look pretty good on the outside, but nobody knows what happens inside our house and inside our houses behind the doors. But we look good at church. When you step into poverty, people are pretty real. They look crappy all the time, and there's a lot less pretense that goes on. You know you're dealing with woundedness and brokenness. But there's just as much woundedness and brokenness in the middle class. All right, so let's pick a topic. They have really good shoes on. They say they have no money and they come with really good shoes. Why might they have been able to get good shoes? Other than paying for them, how else could they get them? You heard that one? They fell off the back of the truck.
Someone gave them to them.
How else? They were donated. Absolutely. What else? Stolen. Anybody thrift? Any of you guys go thrifting? Have you ever found like really nice high-end stuff for like $5? Yeah. Everything you see on me is from a thrift store. You're probably going, yeah, you can tell. Especially the shoes. Yeah. There's a lot of reasons why somebody might have something really nice. So when we come into a relationship with somebody, when you live, not just in poverty, but I'll give you some examples of other things too. When you are living in the tyranny of the moment, which means you're in survival mode, what do you have to rely on so that you can survive when you're meeting somebody else? Are you going by their words, or are you going by something different? What else might you be observant of if you want to make sure that you're safe? Behavior. Body language. When you grow up in poverty, you have to know in order to survive whether walking in is safe or not. If you grew up in an alcoholic family, doesn't matter what your economic thing is, if you grew up in an alcoholic family, when you came home from school, what was the first thing you did when you walked in the door? And whoever's the alcoholic, mom or dad, what's the first thing that you're going to find out when you come home from school? Is it safe? Am I going to walk in and I'm going to read the room, I'm going to read the body language, I'm going to read all that stuff, and if it's not safe, I'm going to go right back out the door and I'm going to go play. And if I can't do that, then I'm putting myself in harm in a dangerous way. So I have to learn how to read body language really, really fast. Is that making sense? Okay, so not asking anybody to reveal themselves, but odds are in this room, there's alcoholism, there is sexual abuse, there is physical abuse in this room. And if you didn't learn how to read things, you learned really fast how to read things so that you can get yourself out of harm's way as quickly as possible. So when you grow up in poverty, you have to read people's body language really well. Can I go down this street? Nope, I'm gonna go down another street. Can I walk by this house right now? Nope. Is this person out to harm me, or are they, so you're learning that. So the cues that you pick up are what help you make your assessments. So if we're stepping into a relationship with somebody and we look at their shoes and in our heads we're going, where the heck did she get the money for those shoes? I don't even have the money for those shoes. And that's what we're thinking in our head in the back. But in the front we're going, hi, my name's Lynn. Where the heck did she get those shoes? I don't even have the money for those shoes. Odds are they're reading your body language, and that little thing that's in the back of your head is showing all over you. So if we want to step into this kind of relationship, whatever it is, we need to start suspending our judgment so that we can start coming to understanding. Because I want to know this person. I want to know about them. I want to know what brings them joy. I want to know what their fears are. I want to know how I can step in. I want to know where I need to stay out of. But I can't do any of that if I have all these judgments in the back of my head. Look at her fingernails. Look at this. Look at them. All those things that go on that we all have, right? So already we're creating walls. When we start having judgments. That's why it's really important to talk about these things out loud, to speak them, because it's just like the whole thing with God and light. What darkness cannot survive in light. So that's why he tells us, speak it, say it out loud, bring all your stuff, put it at my feet, put it in the light, because it cannot fester if it's in the light. But if you don't speak it, you don't talk it, and you keep it in the dark, in the closet in the back, that's when Satan gets to go and do all the things that he does. Yes?
So you're identifying like stinking thinking, kind of.
Stinking thinking.
And then what is the replacement? What lens do we look through then to
All right, well,
avoid that judgment?
Let's do, everybody stand up for a second. All right, there are two ways of thinking. You're going to need to spread out a little bit. There's what's called concrete thinking and abstract thinking. Abstract means that you can hold a concept in your head. Concrete means you need to touch it, feel it. You can't hold it in your head. So we're going to find out right now if you're a concrete thinker or an abstract thinker. Are you ready? All right, I'm just going to give you some instructions. I'm going to do it fast. Just go with it, see how it goes. You are a clock. These arms, your arms are the hands of the clock. Without doing anything in your head, I want you to do it with your arms. Put your arms at 3 o'clock. Go to 3:15. Go forward to 3:15. Go back to 5 to 3. Now I want you to go forward to 10 after 3. No, I'm doing it totally wrong. Let's try it again. Ready? Put your hands at 3. Go forward 15 minutes. Go forward 5 minutes. Go back 10 minutes. Go back 5 minutes. Go forward 10 minutes. What time is it? 3:15. Very good. A lot of you got that. That was excellent. One more time. Put your hands at 5. Go forward 25 minutes. Go back 10 minutes. Go forward 15 minutes. What time is it? 5:30. You guys go. All right. The what?
Yeah, what does it mean? Are we concrete?
That's concrete. Now I want you without your arms. Ready? It's 6 o'clock. Go forward 15 minutes. Go back 10. Go forward 20. What time is it?
6:25.
This is a spectacular day. I'm just stunned by this. I mean, like, you were both. How did this happen? Sit down. I can't even make a point here. You. All right, so what usually happens, is that when you do it with the concrete, people are like, is this the big hand, and this the middle hand? And nobody knows what time it is, which means you are not probably a concrete thinker. And when you have somebody do it in their head, they're like, up, and it's really, really easy. All right, when you grow up in poverty, you grow up concretely thinking. Tell me what you think school, when you go to school, does that take concrete or abstract thinking? Abstract. Schools are based all about abstract thinking. So if you grow up in poverty, one of the things that they talk about is words alone, is that if you grow up in poverty, you're going to be exposed to, and I'm not going to get the numbers right, and I'm not going to go back there and look, but you'll get the general idea. You are exposed to 20,000 words by the time you hit age 3. If you live in middle class, you're exposed to 75,000 words. That's a huge difference. So right off the bat, when you grow up in poverty, you are behind by 2 years. By the time you hit kindergarten, you are behind 2 years in your critical thinking. You are a concrete thinker. So this is what happens in language. If I am living in the tyranny of the moment, which means things have to happen fast, I don't have what's called a future story. I talk about the here and the now, and that's it. So my sentences are short, they're to the point. So it'd be like, stop doing that! As opposed to, you know what, if you keep doing that, then what's going to happen is, as you're climbing up, if you lose your balance, you're going to fall, it's going to hurt a lot. So that's why we don't climb. So as parents, we either tell the why, which is abstract thinking. If you do this, then this is what's going to happen. If you do this, then this is what's going to happen. And we give the why, which means we're giving them a future story, something to think about so that they can start to plan ahead. But if you live in the tyranny of the moment, in poverty, you've got all these people in the house, there's a lot of kids, you're under a lot of pressure, you've got to get to work, and they start climbing. You don't have time to say why, it's just get down. Get down now! Okay. When do we, that's concrete. As talking middle class people, we talk a lot. When do we go into concrete talking with our little kids? Going in the street. My oldest daughter's name is Kristen. I don't sit there and go, Kristen, don't stop running, don't go into the street, because see that car that's coming? If it keeps coming, you're gonna get no, then I become very concrete. I'm like, get out of it! Ah. So I mean, we all do both, but the difference is that I spend a lot of time telling my children why I'm telling them the reasons that I'm telling them, as opposed to just shut up, stop. But
Or even just narrating your life.
yeah,
I don't think
absolutely.
that happens even as much. Hey, look at what's passing by outside, what we're looking at in the grocery store, just all of that extra.
So did you know that in she talks about a grocery store in North Chicago, which is the community that I work in. It is sandwiched between Libertyville and Lake Forest. And those are called super zip codes, very, very rich areas. North Chicago is the second poorest city in Illinois, right in between these two places, all right? North Chicago does not have a grocery store. North Chicago does not have a bank. Where do you get your food?
Convenience store.
You go to the gas station. You go to the gas station. So you don't get to sit there and talk about, look at the apples, look at the oranges, look at the that. There aren't apples and oranges at the grocery Walgreens has done this whole thing, I don't know if you guys, have you seen the Walgreens, and they have all of the food that they're starting to bring in the Walgreens, that's one of the reasons why, is for food deserts. Places, a lot of places that are food deserts, which means they don't have access to grocery stores, and that's why they started doing it. Costs a lot more, so it sits there, but they're trying, so that's, I mean, that's really good, yes.
So that's why we see chips. I think that's
Yes.
something we see a lot, like do they only eat chips, hot chips? But that's because that's what they have access to.
That's what you have access to, it's cheap, it fills you up. Why would I spend $1 for an apple when I can get 2 bags of something for $1? Or I can get, this big thing for $1. So, yeah. And I've totally lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? Shoes! Oh, we're way back to the shoes. Thank you, forward thinking. There's no future story, right? So if you grow up with hearing a minimal amount of words, that nobody's sitting there and saying, oh, look at this, or taking you to new places, your world is very, very small, as opposed to you're not being introduced to lots of things.
Pertaining to future, it also tells them that there's no hope.
Yeah, if there's no future story,
There's
what does
nothing
that
to
mean?
look forward to.
Yeah. So I live in the here and now. That's what concrete is. It's whatever's here and whatever is now. So, so we work with the girls on not fighting, for instance. Okay? You try telling somebody not to fight when they have somebody has just totally dissed their best friend, or has taken a swing at a boyfriend, or something about their mom. Your first instinct is, nuh-uh, and you're gonna go and you're gonna get in. And there's not a thought process of, if I get into a fight, I'm gonna get in trouble, I'm probably gonna get suspended from school, the police might show up. There's all these things that if you start thinking forward, because you grew up with a mom or a dad or somebody saying, okay, we don't do that because of this. How many times have you said to your kids, use your words? Kids are like, it's like, no, let's use our words. What are you feeling? Right? How many times have Dave looked at you and said, what are you feeling? But it's that is a great thing, because how often do we get to talk about what we're feeling, right? But if you grew up with that kind of stuff, then you get to get all that stuff out. But those kind of things don't happen a lot of times when you're living in the moment. So it's whatever I'm feeling is gonna come out. I'm not thinking about what could happen later. That's called the tyranny of the moment, or survival mode. So a lot of the stuff that you're dealing with.
I have a question, just, how you would counsel somebody then? Our foster daughter's mother is in prison right now, again, for assaulting the father.
Yeah.
And definitely, she's a very concrete thinker, and she's about ready, her rights are gonna be terminated probably the next time we go to court, which frankly is what we're hoping and praying happens, but, in having a conversation to listen to her, my logic was like, he's out and now she's in jail, she's blown it, she bit the finger of some woman, it was just a hot mess altercation in the moment.
Right.
And so I'm listening to her and I'm saying, I'm not judging you, but this was her one shot to kind of keep her nose clean for this 6-month period before we go back to court for the permanency hearing again. And so I feel like, how do you then interface with somebody who, it's not achievement where I'm judging her, but I'm like, the reality is she made a very poor choice in that moment that's gonna affect
Everything.
forever, and to get them to think beyond the moment, like beyond
That's
the
a
second.
really long, that's a really long
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
I mean, for those of you that have children, and Dave, you feel free to jump in on this, because you could probably speak to this better than I can speak to it. But that's like when you think of your children, they are concrete thinkers. When kids are concrete thinkers. They live in the moment, they live in the here and the now. We have to teach them how to look forward and how to understand consequences. But I don't expect my 3-year-old to understand that concept like I would expect my 10-year-old. And I don't expect my 10-year-old to understand it like my 16-year-old. And I don't even expect my 16-year-old to understand it like she is when she's 20. So we just went through 20 years, 22 years of learning these skills together. And can you see how you're setting yourself up for frustration and anger if you think that because of the love and the care that you are feeling, that that's going to translate in a month, 5 months, a year, 5 years?
What should our mindset be then?
What's the mindset of Jesus?
So you would say, so I totally get that, and that's what my question is. So you would just say, if you were interacting with somebody, like just listen to them, and not think, just love you.
No. Yes, listen.
Right.
Yes, sit in it with them.
Not
Yes,
like call them out,
meet
it was a
them.
poor choice.
But at the same time, this is where we have resources that they do not have. So I do know how to think forward. So but I'm not going to give them that until they want it. Otherwise, it's like Jesus did not force himself on anybody. God does not break down the door and tell you, you must do this. He gets invited in. And the way that you get invited in is that you sit in relationship first, and you just sit in it. You sit in it. That doesn't mean that you don't teach. It doesn't mean that you don't, you get to a point where you would say something like, so I have this observation about what's going on inside my head. Would you be interested in hearing it? And if not, I'm okay with that. But I've got this thing on my heart I would love to share with you. That be okay? Want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of really, which is different than foster care because you have judges now making decisions and, it's kind of beyond that whole thing, right? So, but with, say, families, it's really about long-term relationships. Parents aren't going to get better in 40 days, right? The key is how can we leverage those 40 days to begin the relationship that will continue, hopefully, if they want it and we want it, we'll continue and help them in the long haul that could take months and, but I think the other part, someone said, well, the biggest problem with all the kids in safe families is that these parents have no one else to turn to. So in the meantime, we want to provide safety for their kids, right? While they're learning to be a parent and while they're growing in some of their decisions. And that takes time, and we find that when a parent sees that you're willing to help them and you're not willing to judge them, they're more likely to identify when they need help and reach out, which is really our goal that we try to do. But it doesn't always work, so.
Pull out this piece of paper, it's on the tables. It says, if an individual depends upon a random. Am I almost done, timeless? I like the way somebody turned the clock away, that was very nice. Yeah, like I said, the time that we have is just so short, so obviously we're barely scratching the surface, but if an individual depends upon a random episodic story structure for memory pattern, which means that the person lives in chaos. That means that there's no foundation in which to stand on. I go outside and I walk to school and a gun goes off and I hit the ground. Okay, that is a chaotic experience, right? I have never in my whole life ever worried about walking somewhere and that a gun would go off. I've never heard a gun go off except if I was at a firing range. That's the only place I have heard what a gun sounds like. So that is not something that I have to deal with. So that's a chaotic thing. That's a random episodic story structure. That, okay, does that make sense? Okay. Lives in an unpredictable environment, right? And does not have the ability to plan or forward think, then the individual cannot plan. I don't know how to do it. It's never been modeled to me. Nobody taught me how to do it, so I live in the moment. Whatever is what I think is best for that moment, that is what I'm going to do, regardless of the consequences, because that's all I know. If an individual cannot plan, then they can't predict. If they cannot predict, then they can't identify cause and effect. If they can't identify cause and effect, then they can't identify consequences. And if they can't identify consequences, then they can't control impulsivity. And if they cannot control impulsivity, then they have an inclination towards criminal behavior. You can see it's just like this thing that happens. And I think we get involved, and again, it's not every situation, all right? So we don't wanna pin people into holes, but when you tend to grow up in those types of environments, that's what happens. So I'm in the jail, and it is very normal that they are there. Because my dad is here, my son's in the other pod, my dad's in that pod. It's my 5th time. But that's just kind of what happens. That's just what it is. I don't like it here. But, Jesus does amazing things, but that's a whole other story. Yeah, so if that is a normal, then why would we sit there and go, why aren't they grateful? Or why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? Because I'm going to live in the moment. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to live in the moment. So you mentioned that you grew up in poverty. Yes? Borderline poverty. Is any of this connecting with you at all, or are we off? Yeah. Okay. Connecting? Okay. All right. Give me another. And again, I lost me. Yeah. Babies. Why do they have so many babies? What is their driving motivation? What's the driving motivation? In poverty? Relationships. What do babies bring? Love and relationships.
Attention.
So here's some hidden rules.
I think also it's a way to hope the guy to stay, right? If you have their baby, then you hope that someone will stay with you, so I think that would be part of it as well.
So let me give you a few hidden rules that will help understand a little bit about stuff. Possessions. In middle class, what do we love? Our stuff. Oh, we love our stuff. And we accumulate our stuff, and if we have too much stuff, what do?
Storage.
We go to the storage unit, and we put our stuff in the storage unit. We can't see our stuff, but we know that our stuff is there. And we can go look at it whenever we want, because it's our stuff. I love that. I don't know why that cracks me up so much. In poverty, what are our possessions? Because we don't have possessions, because if we have too much stuff, we can't, and we get kicked out of this place, or we can't afford this place, and we got to go to someplace else. I can't take all this stuff with me. I have to be able to go. So what are our possessions? People. Babies are our chance to be loved, something that's mine. This is mine. through the church. She had 8 children and she was pregnant with her 9th. No, she had 7 children, pregnant with her 8th. And, oh my gosh, she loved her children. What she did with that amount of children, I could never do. I freaked out at 2. I'm like, I'm tapped out. I can't do more than 2. But obviously, I mean, under the best of circumstances, it would be hard to have 8 children, yes? And then, so now you think of other, poverty circumstances, it's even worse. But the love that she felt for her children, it just exuded out of her. It wasn't a good situation. But she loved them. She couldn't care for them really well. But she loved them. She didn't do a good job of protecting them. But she did love them. They were hers. In middle class, let's see, let's go to a fun one. Money. All right, in middle class, what do we do with our money? Spend it.
Plan for it.
You invest it, you plan it, you manage it, right? Anyone have 401k? Anybody have a retirement account? Oh, I don't even know what a 529 is. What is it? Oh, see, we didn't say for college. We told our girls, if you go to college, and you will go to college, you're going to community college for 2 years, and then we'll just pray and hope for the best. Yeah.
And they survive.
That's pretty good. Yeah, we manage our money. What do you think you do with money in poverty? You spend it. Because you don't know when it's going to come again. There's always something to spend it on. So when I was growing up, I did not know this, but when I went through some of this training, it made so much sense to me. My dad came from poverty, my mom came from middle class. And they would have fights all the time about money. And as children, we thought my dad was the bomb, because he would say, we have some money, what do you want to go do? And we're like, oh, well. And we would come up with all sorts of ideas, and off we would go. And my mom was just like, no, we need to do that, we need to put some of this, we need to and my dad would just look at her and go, well, that's not fun. And we're like, that's not fun. Come on, Dad, win this one. And as a kid, it was like, that's really cool. As an adult, my parents are divorced. My mom is very fine and well off, and my dad can't climb out of a paper bag because he does not know what to do with the money. And finally, at the age of 75, he let my sister and I take over his money, and he is shocked that he now has money. It's like, where's all this money coming from? It's like, we've always had it. Just squandered it because he didn't know what to do with money. Money is to be spent. When you live in poverty, you save it. What are you going to save it for? You might not be around tomorrow. And I have all these things that I need to do with it, so as soon as it comes in, it goes. The most exciting time, like in North Chicago, for instance, when do you think would be exciting time? Tax season. It's like, oh my gosh, the amount of TVs and cars and things that are purchased around tax time doesn't mean that they can keep the car for a really long time, because eventually you can't pay for it anymore, but man, you can have a really nice car for a period of time. And then the refund comes and gets it. And that's okay. So money is looked at as viewed very, very differently. So as you are interacting with somebody and you don't understand why, okay, your baby is drinking soda out of the bottle, but he's wearing a whole Air Jordan outfit. What is that? What is that? Okay, so let me help you with what that is. Personality, clothing. In the middle class, what do we value in our clothes? Quality. Right. Quality is very important. Acceptance. Name brand things, we've all heard, if I don't have this, then everyone's going to laugh at me. In poverty, because you can't use it in other ways, you can show who you are through you. You are what is the billboard, so to speak. How many of you like to decorate your homes? Yeah, decorate, I mean, that shows our personality, right? How many of you, what you drive is a reflection of who you are, so you want a certain type of car. Oh, I'm seeing looks here.
Oh, impossible.
Oh, I like that. So
How low can we go?
but you know what, that reflects a value that you hold. And I happen to be, look at how I'm dressed, for goodness sakes. I would rather spend my money on something other than a car. A car is meaningless to me, but to other people, a car is very important. So we are gonna reflect what's important to us by the things that we do. If you don't have a lot of money, you're gonna reflect who you are by what you wear. So clothing becomes very important. That's how I can share my personality with you. So, I want my baby to look good, because that is important. It's not important to me, but it's important to this mom. And if I sit there and I put my value on that, I don't think that's the most important thing, but she does. And if I sit there and impose my value on her, then do we have any chance of meeting here? So regardless of whether she's right or she's wrong, if I want to be able to be in a relationship with her and speak into her life, and I have some valuable things to speak into somebody's life. I'm not right all the time. It has nothing to do with that. If we're not like this, then she's not going to hear me. If she feels like I've put myself up here and I've put her down there, she is not going to hear a word I say. There's too much gap. Yeah.
Well, the point where it gets challenging, and I don't know if other people feel this way too, is when you see that the child is not being cared for optimally, like drinking the soda. I
Right.
mean, that's just hard.
It is hard, absolutely. And that's what I say, it's not like you don't step into those things. It depends on how you step into those things. And so that's why the relationship is so important, because if we come in this way, then I get to speak into that. But if I come in like, I know the answers, and I'm gonna help you, I'm the strong, you're the weak, I'm the good mom, you're not the good mom. Whatever it is that I'm coming in on, if I come in this way, I don't get to speak into that. She will not allow that. She will not listen. Yeah.
So even with the kids, we had a teenager with us for a period of time, and he broke his leg and had his shoes cut off. So when he came to us, he didn't have shoes. So we pooled resources and we got some shoes that were donated, but they were like $100 running shoes. And he was like, no, I don't want those. My mom will get me some when I get back with her. I'm like, that's like 2 months, it's December. Dude, you need some shoes. And he would not take the shoes. He would not put the shoes on.
So what did you do?
He wore socks
Like everywhere he went?
everywhere he went with his crutches.
With his crutches?
Yeah.
And was that okay? I mean, did anything bad happen?
Nothing bad happened. It was so frustrating for us.
But nothing bad happened to him. It's like he didn't get gangrene in his feet because it was cold or anything like that. So why was that so frustrating?
It's just that token of a gift, and somebody's giving you something and that refusal to take it because it's not good enough. And it wasn't Jordan's or whatever in his mind.
Why might he refuse it other than maybe it's not good enough?
A pride issue.
It could be pride. What else could it be?
Loyalty to his mom.
Yes. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's it, but yeah, absolutely. What might be another reason? That one gave me goosebumps though, so we must be getting close. Yes. What do you want from me? Are you expecting something back from me? Yeah, I'm not gonna get involved. Who knows? Who knows? But there's some reason behind that, and we don't get to know those reasons unless there's trust, right? And why would we feel such frustration that I'm giving you something but you don't want it? Jesus offer us that we don't take, like, all the time? I mean, that happens all the time, right? And he's so patient, he just, okay, that's okay, I'll offer it again. Don't want it yet? Okay. Oh my gosh, I love you so much, I'm gonna woo you to me, woo you to me. Not yet? Okay. Not yet?
I think it's frustrating too, because you're trying so hard to do the right thing, that's the right thing in your heart,
Absolutely.
and they're turning that away, and what else can you do? I went out and got you these wonderful shoes, and now you're refusing them, and you're gonna walk around in the cold with the barefoot, you know? So I think it's just totally, that's frustrating, because
Absolutely.
what else can I
it's
do?
Frustrating. Absolutely, it's frustrating. And that's why we're talking about it, right? Because it is frustrating, but once we get frustrated, we're exuding something to somebody, right? And that's creating separation between us. So my youngest daughter hated to put on gloves. And, you know, I want my daughter to go out in the snow with gloves. I don't want her with, no gloves. And so we're having these big battles over it, and finally I just went, all right, we'll do natural consequences, see how that goes. So it's like, okay, go out without your gloves. And she went out and played in the snow, and she comes back in, and I didn't hear from her for a while, and I hear this, and I go up to the bedroom, you okay? I'm fine! Can I come in? No! And her little fingers hurt so bad, I mean, it was kind of scary, like, did she get frostbite? I mean, they were not the right color. And it took a long time for her to get feelings back in her fingers. You think she wore gloves after that? Mm-hmm. Yes, she did. We never had to talk about it ever again. And that was a really big learning lesson for me, that there's a lot of stuff that I don't need to fight about. I need to learn what to fight over and what not to fight over. So that kind of goes back to, are you a fixer or a judger?
Isn't there something else? There should be a third option.
The only point of it is that it's important that we know why we are feeling frustrated. I'm giving you this, why won't you take it? As opposed to, what is a gift supposed to be?
At what point do you say, you know what, I know what's better for you, and I'm gonna invoke this concrete relationship in this case. Since you understand that better than what I'm trying to teach you, this is what it's gonna do. And you know it's for their own good, so they don't have frostbitten hands. Because you're kind of, in a way, hoping that they don't get frostbite. You're hoping
Yeah.
they just get hurt a lot, so maybe they'll realize it. But you can't guarantee that won't happen.
No, you can't.
So at what point do you take the high road and say, this is the concrete that they'll understand, and you're wearing those gloves?
I'm gonna defer to Dave on this. Dave, I think our time is just about up. It has been awesome, man.
Actually didn't hear the question.
Dave is showing classic disassociation right now.
So we're kind of running short. I mean, I will address that in a minute, but let's give Lynn a hand.